Hi, so in this video I'll be showing you how to work with inheritance in C++. So if you just want to get an understanding first of all on object-oriented programming, do watch my previous video which is about objects and classes in C++, and I'm leading this by an example over there which I used a triangle class, so do watch that if you want to just get a head start on object-oriented programming. So this video will be about using inheritance. So again, I'll be leading again here by example, creating files and just working together with different classes and objects. So just a recap on inheritance. So inheritance is basically a form of software reuse. So instead of creating two identical classes, you can use one as a base and then create other classes which takes on the base class and just creating derived classes from it. So that is a much more efficient way when it comes to using C++ and object-oriented programming. I mean, it avoids duplicating code and it's just much more efficient. So I'll be leading by this example. So we're going to be creating two classes, an engineer class, which is going to be the base class, which will have the basic information such as the salary, the bonus, and their names. And then we're going to have a senior engineer, which will use the same thing as the base class. It will invoke everything from the base, but will also have a extended salary since they are a senior engineer. So I'll be splitting them up into header files and CPP files. So I talk more about as to why I'm doing that in the video, so do keep watching. And again, in the main, I just put everything together, create objects, and we experiment and see what happens when we print out certain elements. So there will be a following video on from this. It will be a polymorphism video, which will be a bit more challenging. We'll be using the same project, but we'll be just extending it and making it much more complex using abstract classes and pure virtual and virtual functions. So do watch this video, especially if you want to just really get an understanding of C++. And again, this video will be inside my description box below, which will be in my GitHub. So feel free to access the code, take it, play around with it. I mean, it's all yours. So if you really do like this video, please watch it and give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. And yeah, so I really hope you enjoy it. Okay, so I'm going to click on create a new Xcode project. I'm going to click command line tool, click on next. I'm just going to name my project, I'm going to name it engineer class. That's fine. Making sure the language selected is C++. I'm going to click next, save it on my desktop, and then click create. Okay, so now it gives us our main CPP file. We're going to leave that right at the end, so we're not going to use that at the moment. What we want to do now is create our header file, because we're going to be splitting up our work into a header file and a CPP file. So we're just going to click on this. I'm going to do right click, new file. I'm going to select header file and click on next. I'm going to name this one engineer. Okay, and I'm going to click on create. Okay, and there we have our header file. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go on down over here. Okay, so first of all, the main step that I do is I import a string, so making sure that we can use strings throughout the program. So I'm just going to do include string. Okay, so like I said, we're going to split up our CPP file and our header file. So the header file includes the member functions, but it's not the implementation, but just the member function names itself. Inside the CPP file, we then connect it both. This is a really good practice because maybe you want to change something in the header file, you want to change something in the CPP file, and it won't affect, instead of creating one large file and having everything in there, when it comes to changing, it will be much more difficult. But having them split up is much more efficient. So after including a string, I'm going to now create my class. So my file is named engineer, so my class should be also named engineer. So I'm going to do class engineer. I'm just going to open that. Okay, so now I'm going to start off with my private variables. So using private, it means it is only accessible from this class. So if I just do private, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to name my private variables. So first one is I'm going to do is name. So let's do string, let's do first name. Okay, we're going to do string last name. Okay, one more thing. Because here in header file it is not, it is seen as not right to use namespace std. So usually people would do using namespace std, and they'll be able to use the input and output services and the strings just like normal. But it is recommended to not use this in the header file. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this myself, just like that. I mean, it can take a long time, but again, it is seen as best practice. So we have first name and we have last name. So we're going to have, let's do also, whoops, it should be 2, by the way, not 1. Yeah, just like that. That's my mistake. Okay, so let's do string engineer ID. Okay, and let's create 2 doubles. So the first one will be, let's do double salary, and next one's going to be double bonus. So an engineer will have its salary and will also have a bonus. Okay, so now that we have our privates done, next step is let's start with the public part now. So I'm just going to do public. Okay, so first we're going to do our constructor. So again, not any implementation, but these are just the names of them. So our constructor, we're going to do engineer. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is, actually, let's leave this at the end. Okay, so now since we have, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we have 5 private members. So we'll give them a set and a get function. So we'll do void set first name. So void means nothing's going to be returned. So we're going to do void set first name, and then we're going to do const, so making it a constant. Again, do this because it's the string, and then we're going to pass this by reference. So it's preferred that in C++ you do pass by constant reference. This is to avoid copies, and it's also going to make the performance of your application much more better and much more faster. So we're going to do set first name. Actually, I'm just going to do, just make it more, just do, yeah, set f name, just make it much more shorter for us. And then let's do, actually, let's do then std string get f name. So this returns, okay, and also make it a constant. Okay, and then we'll do void set l name const std, also is going to be a string, and then we're going to do get l name, and again we're going to make it a constant. So constant basically prevents any accidental modification of the program or of the values. Okay, so what I'm going to do again, just to make it much more easy, I'm just going to copy this underneath here. So I'm going to do, instead of set engineer ID, I'm just going to do set ID, and then of course leave that the same, and then here as well we're going to do get ID. Okay, just like that. Okay, so now for the doubles. So when you do pass by constant reference, this does not apply to doubles or to integers. So for this we're going to leave this just standard. So we're going to do void set salary, which is going to be a double. Okay, and then we're going to do double get salary. Okay, so like I said, void does not return anything, but so for example, if we do double get salary inside the CPP file, when we do the implementation, we are going to return the get salary, but we also need to make sure that salary is a double that we are returning. So it returns a double. So we do double get salary. Just going to make this a constant. This is the constant part over here. I think it's up to you whether you want to do it, but because this is more of a beginner tutorial, I'm just going to show you how maybe a good way to get started, and afterwards once you're more comfortable with the program, you can then start to experiment and removing the constants such as these ones over here. Okay, so next step is we're going to do void set bonus again, which is a double, and then we're going to do double get bonus, which is a constant. Okay, so now we want to get the users overall, so being able to plus the salary with the bonus. So I'm going to create another member function, and I'm going to name this one, it's also going to be a double. Because we don't have no private variables and we just want to plus the salary and the bonus, we don't need to do any voids, so we don't need to set anything, we just want to get something. So I'm going to do double, let's do total salary, okay, and make this one a constant as well. Okay, and then lastly, let's just do a void print. Okay, so just like that. So now this is basically our header file currently. Again, like I said, it's just the member function names. So now let's complete the constructor. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 private members. So we're going to do constant. So we're going to pass the string. So the string is going to get passed from the main. We're going to also do the second string, which is going to be the last name. Okay, so the next one again is going to be the ID. So we do constant string. Again, like I said, we're doing pass by constant reference. So this is the constructor. So when the user creates the objects, it's going to pass 5 values: the first name, which is a string, a last name, which is a string, and the engineer ID, which is a string. And like I said, we're doing pass by constant reference to avoid any copies, making the application much more faster. And lastly, we're going to have 2 doubles, which is the double salary and the double bonus. So we're going to do double. With the doubles, we need to initialize it. So do 0.0. And because if it's just a standard double, it won't. You'll get those are different numbers coming up. So just to be much more on the safe side, I do like to initialize it with a number. So I'm just going to have it as 0.0 and double 0.0, because then it will start to get the actual doubles number, which we don't want. So we just want it to be set here as 0.0. Okay, so now that we have that is basically our header file done. So I'm just going to save this. So now that we've got this done, now we can go on to building our CPP file, which is basically the full implementation of this header file. So I'm just going to create a new file. I'm going to create a C++ file now because it needs to be a CPP. I'm going to click on next. We're not going to create a header file because we already have one. So I'm going to also name this engineer and then click next. Save it in the same location and click create. Okay, so now to link this CPP file with the header file, we need to include. So we need to include the header file into the program. So we do include engineer.h. So this what basically does is it now includes the header file. So this basically is now incorporated into this. Also, just before that, just over here, I'm going to import the iOSTree. So this basically lets us do inputs and outputs. We'll see if we're actually going to use them, but I just like to have it inside my CPP file. And also because we are in a CPP file, we can use the namespace std. So So I'm just going to do using namespace std. Okay, so now we can get started in actually building our constructor. So if I just do this, so engineer const and go on, this won't work. We still need to link this basically we still need to link this CPP file to the header file. So what we need to do is just before we need to attach it to the header file by doing engineer and then using the scope resolution operator. Okay, let me just skip this for now. Using the scope resolution operator to link it to the header file, just like that. So our header file is called engineer, so we need to link it still, even though we still imported it. So now we can get started. So now that we've linked to the header file, we can now get our constructor done. So we have constant, string, again we're doing it by reference. So now we've gotten them, we've got the values from the objects, and now we're just going to give them names. So we're going to name this one, let's do fname. The second value, we are going to name the lname. So as you can see, I'm doing constant string with the reference fname. It has to be exactly the same here. So here, same thing, we do constant string and the name of the reference. Same thing here. So now we're taking the user's values and we're just putting them inside fname, inside lname. We're going to create another one, which is the ID. And now we have our two doubles left. So I'm just going to do double salary, double salary, and double bonus. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is now initialize everything. So I'm just going to do a colon over here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is if I go back to the header file, here I have my private variables. So now what I'm going to initialize them. So I'm going to create a member initializer. So I'm going to have first name, which is the name of the private variable, and first name is going to be connected to whatever the user put as its first name, which is now this. So I'm going to include fname in there, just like that. I'm going to continue doing that. So the last name private variable is going to include whatever the user wrote for the last name. So for lname. And lastly, the ID, I'm going to include the ID, just like that. For the two doubles, instead of continuing, I'm just going to do open bracket, and inside here, I'm going to call the member functions rather than accessing the private data directly. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do set salary, sales, which again is going from the constructor over here, and then lastly I'm going to do set bonus, which again is coming from the private from the constructor over here. Okay, so just like that. I'm sorry, not sales, it should be salary. Okay, so now we have basically our constructor done. So now we can then move on now to the set and get. So we're going to do void. So if you go back here, so if we start off with void setting the first name, again we need to link it to the header file. So we do void engineer scope resolution operator, and then we do set the name, set first name, and then we do constant string first. So here I'm just using the same name as I used here inside the constructor. Nope, whoopsie. Yeah, So I'm just using the same name here as I'm using inside the constructor over here. So as you can see here, set f name, so constant string, the reference, and same here. So now I'm just going to set it inside here. So I'm going to do first name equals f name. Okay. So even though the user's values will be initialized inside here, if the user wanted to maybe change the first name, it would call this function, and it would set the user's name chosen, so the f name, which will go inside the private variable and first name, and now the name will be changed. So next step is going to do the get. So if we do string, again we have to connect it, so we do string engineer, and then we do get f name. I'm going to make it a constant, and I'm just going to do return first name. So here, if the user wanted to call the first name, it would call this function and it would return whatever is inside the private variable first name. I'm just going to copy this, so instead of doing, writing down all the last name, I'm just going to do this, and I'm just going to do set L name. Okay, and then just do this quickly. Okay, and then lastly we're going to do get L name, and then we're going to do return last name. And the same thing, I'm just going to copy this, even though I already copied it. I'm going to do the same thing here for the ID. So set ID, just do this, and then I think I named it, did I name it ID, or I'm just going to double check what I named it. Okay, engineer ID. So engineer ID equals ID. And then same thing here, so I'm just going to do get ID. I'm going to do return the engineer ID. So now we have this, which is so far fine. So we have now our set and gets for the string value. So now let's move on to the double. So another reason why we made it like this instead of doing it the way that we did over here is we want to also make sure that we do some sort of validation. So we're making sure that the salary that the user inputs is actually a number. So what if the user enters, I don't know, words? That's not going to work, is it? So what we're going to do is we are going to create our member function. So again, we connect it. So we do void engineer, and then I'm going to do, I think it was set salary. Okay, so set salary, and I'm going to name it same thing other than here, which is salary. Okay, so now I'm going to do an if statement, and I say that if the salary that the user entered is more or is equal to 0.0, we're going to set it. So we're going to do salary equals the salary. So here we are having the same name. What's this? Okay. Here we are having the same name because inside here we did name it also salary, and over here we also named it salary as well. Okay, and then we do, let's just get rid of this. Okay, and then we can do else. So else, if it's not more, okay, let me get rid of that. Okay, so if it's not more than 0.0, let's throw an invalid argument. So we throw invalid argument, and I will just write a little message. So salary must be higher than 0.0. Okay. And also let's get rid of this, we don't need this, so we can just have our statement like that instead of adding too much brackets. I'm just going to do that so you can just see more clearly. Okay, so I'm just going to now do our get. So I'm going to do double again link it. We're going to do get salary, which is a constant. I'm just going to return that. So I'm going to do return salary. And same thing with the bonus. So I'm just going to copy this. So I'm going to do set bonus, name it as double bonus. Okay, so if the bonus is more than 0.0, we assign the bonus. Else we'll write bonus must be higher than 0.0 or else it won't be a bonus. And here I'm just going to do get bonus, and we are going to do return bonus. Okay, and you can play with this around, so you can do if bonus is more than 0 and less than another number. I mean, it's up to you what you want to do over here. So I'm just showing you, just a little starter of what then you can do afterwards in your own time. Okay, so next step is the total salary. So inside here, if we go to our header file, we did create a also member function called total salary. So I'm just going to do double. Okay, and then I'm just going to put its name, which is total salary. It's going to be a constant. Okay, so we want to basically plus the salary with the bonus. So instead of doing bonus plus salary, we're going to call the member function instead rather than accessing the private data directly. So it will be something is more the preferred way rather than accessing the private variables. So I'm going to do return get salary plus get bonus, just like that. And then lastly, we're going to have our print. So we're going to do void engineer print. Okay, so now we are just going to do count. We are going to do, let's do engineer name, and then we do get, whoops, so outside of this, okay, we do get first name, and then we can also do, what else shall we get for now? Let's not get the last name or its ID. We can get the total salary, let's just say that for now. And then we can do just empty spacing. And then let's do get, let's just get salary. Okay. And then let's also do spacings. And then let's just get the total salary. So get, oopsie, not. Actually, no, we didn't do get. So actually, let's just do get its bonus. Okay, so just like that, and I'm just going to just end that. So as you can see, I didn't do actually get total salary because I'm going to show you another way which we're going to do that. So for now, we're going to print out the first name, its salary, and the bonus. So just for a start, actually let me just get rid of this. Yeah, just make it more simpler. So the first name, the salary, and the bonus. We're not going to worry too much about the ID and the last name for now. Okay, so now that we've got that done, we can now move on to the senior software engineer. So I'm going to now create another header file. So new file. Instead, I'm going to click on C++ file. I'm going to create a header file within. I think it'll be much more. Just see what happens. So senior employee, not senior employee, sorry. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another file. So new file. I'm going to make it a C++ file, and then we can include a header file within. And this is going to be a senior engineer. Okay, save it in the same location, and then click create. So this is a HPP file. You can leave it as it is, but I just like to have it as a header file. I'm just going to change everything as a header file over here, and then make sure over here as well it is a header file. Okay, so now inside the senior engineer file, what we need to do is, since we're working on inheritance, so this senior engineer is going to extend the engineer. So the senior engineer is basically going to use the first name and the last name, the employer ID, so we don't need to write that all over again, which is the whole purpose of inheritance. It's all about software reuse. It's all about having the engineer class now as a base with all the important information, and we're going to use the senior engineer class for any extending information that doesn't apply to the engineer, but it applies to the senior engineer. Okay, so first of all, the first step is I'm just again going to do include string, and also what I need to do is I need to include the header file. Okay, I'll just fix this. I'm going to include the engineer header file. So engineer.h, just like that. Okay, so now basically what this means is now the engineer header file, of course along with the CPP file, is now part of this. So now we're able to get access to the base class, which is the engineer's member functions. We're able to get access to basically everything that's inside the engineer class. So we have that as a base. So now we don't really need to, do all this all over again. We're using this now. Okay, and I'll show you more, once we go more deeply, I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. Okay, so now we're going to create our class, so senior engineer. And again, as I say, this is an extension of engineer. So we're going to extend this. We're going to do public engineer. Okay. So now I'm going to create a private. And like I said, we don't need to do over here. So we don't need to write down the first name, the last name again. No. We're just going to create another private variable which only applies to the senior employee but does not apply to the engineer itself. So over here, sorry, this one, the engineer has a salary and it has a bonus. So what we can do is the senior employee, of course, it will have a higher salary. It might include a bonus, but let's just have another private variable. So let's name it. Let's name this one. How about extended pay? So let's do extended salary. Okay, so this is going to be a double. Okay, so the engineer does not have extended pay, but the senior engineer does. So now we can use everything from the engineer class, but we're just extending this with the senior engineer. So now what I'm going to do is going to create now a public. Okay. Okay, so now the next step I'm going to do is create a derived class constructor. So basically what this constructor will do is it will call, so let's go to the header file, so it will call all the base class constructor values, as well as the senior and the extended salary private variable that we just made. So just to show you, so I'm going to do senior engineer, and actually to make it much more easier, so I'm just going to go to my header file and I'm going to copy all of this. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the derived class constructor and I'm using that, and I'm going to create an additional double, which is my extended salary. Double equals 0.0. Okay, again, so like I said, instead of writing a whole code which is going to be exactly the same as the engineer, I'm using the engineer class now as a base. So I don't have to repeat anything. I'm just now creating a derived class constructor which uses the values from the engineer class. Okay, and again, I just need to now set and get the base salary. So again, just to make it much more easier for myself, just going to copy these two, go back to my header file, and then I'm just going to do set extended. Actually no, so let's do set extended salary, just like that, and then I'm just going to do get extended salary. Okay, and now I'm just also going to do another earnings function, because don't forget the engineer, if we look inside the engineer CPP file, for its total salary, we did get salary plus getting the bonus. But with the senior engineer, we're going to get the salary, we're going to get the bonus, and we're also going to get the extended salary. I think that way we'll be able to, just play around with it as well. So I'm going to do again double salary. Actually, let's do it the same name as the header file actually. So double total salary. Okay, just like that. And we're going to also have our print function, because like I said, the print will also be the same because we're going to print out the senior engineer, not the engineer. So we're going to do that as well. So now again, we've got our now derived class, we've got the header file done. So now let's move on to the CPP part, and let's start with implementing everything, and then you'll be able to understand exactly how it works. So if I now go to the senior engineer, again, I'm just going to open the engineer, just going to go up, and let's just, okay, let me just use this for now. Okay, so that I'm also going to do using namespace std. Oops. Okay. So now the first thing we need to do, again, we are going to call the base class constructor just like we did in our header file. So now we're going to actually implement this. So I'm going to do senior engineer, again using the scope resolution operator. I'm going to call the senior engineer header file. As you can see, it's implemented header file. We've implemented the senior engineer header file inside the CPP file. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically now again call the values from inside the base class, which is engineers constructor. So we need to basically invoke the engineers constructor. Okay, so again, very similarly, we do constant string at fname, const string at lname, const string at id, double salary, again making sure it's the same order, double bonus, and now my extended one, we need to include that now. Let's do double extend. Okay. So now, like I said, we need to explicitly now call the base class constructor. So the base class constructor is called engineer. So we're going to do engineer, and again we're going to now put the values inside from the engineer constructor. So to do this, we're going to do fname, which is this, lname, id, salary, and bonus. Okay, just going to remove this. Okay, so now, like I said, now we are explicitly calling the base class constructor, and this is a must to be able to use the constructor from the engineer base class. So now I'm just going to move this along, and now inside here I'm going to do my set extended salary just inside here, and we named it extend, just like that. So we've taken now the constructor of the base class, and now we're basically using that, and now we're going to include the extended salary for the senior engineer. Okay, and I'm just going to put this, okay, just like that. Okay, so now again we need to do the get and set for the extended salary. So again, I'm just going to go back to my engineer CPP file. I'm just going to copy this, paste this. Again, we are using the senior engineer header file, not the engineer, so replace that. Okay, so instead here we're going to do set extended salary and get extended salary, and we name this extend. So extend, and then we do if extend is more than 0, we assign it. So if we go back to the header file, its actual name is extended salary. So then we assign the extend. So with that name again, extended salary, just like that. Else we're going to throw an argument saying that the extended salary must be higher than 0.0. And then lastly, we're going to do return extended salary. Okay, so like I said, over here we have the total salary. We're going to copy this, and now we're going to change it around, because the total salary of the engineer is not going to be the same as the total salary of the senior engineer. So we are going to, again, it's a header file of the senior engineer and the engineer, total salary, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the salary of the extended salary. So I'm going to do get x salary, and we are going to plus it by whatever the engineer earns, because the engineer earns a salary and a bonus, but the senior engineer earns obviously much more than the engineer. So we're going to plus the senior engineer's salary with the engineer's salary and its bonus. So what we're going to do is we're going to call now the total salary function from the engineer. So we're going to call this function to get this calculation. So to do this, quite simply, what you do is you do engineer, which is the base class's name, and then we call total salary, just like that. So again, now we're taking the engineer's total salary and we are plussing it with the extended salary of the senior engineer, which will leave us with the senior engineer's total salary. Okay, so after we've got now the total salary, if we go back to our engineer CPP file, what we want to do is we also want to print this out. So we also want to print out the first name, the salary, and the bonus, because like I said, the senior engineer has a first name, has a salary, and has a bonus. So we want to print that out, and then we can extend this and then obviously print out the extended salary. So just to do this, I'm going to go back to my senior engineer. I'm going to do void So again, senior engineer, I'm going to call print. So again, just to recap, print, we had it inside our header. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to now call the print function of the engineer. So I'm going to do engineer print, which prints that out. And now I'm just also going to print the extended salary. Just like that. So now we have our header files of the engineer. We've now gotten the senior engineer, created a header file. We've extended the engineer's base class. We've added an extra extended salary for the senior engineer, but the senior engineer is very much similar to the engineer in terms of its details. We are using now the CPP file. We've gotten the extended salary and we've plus the extended salary to the engineer's total salary, which gives us the senior engineer's salary, and we're also printing that detail out. Okay, so now the last step we have now is the main. So now inside the main, we can now test everything and making sure that everything is working well. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I don't need to include both the engineer header file and the senior engineer header file, because the senior engineer header file already includes the header file of the engineer. So what's enough for me is just to include the senior engineer. So include the senior engineer header file. Okay. I'm also just going to do using namespace std, which you can use inside the CPP files, but it's not recommended to use inside the header files. Okay, so I'm just going to remove this. I mean, I'm not going to use this. You can have it if you want, but I just like to remove it. Okay, so now let's start off with our main. Okay, so let's start off with senior engineer. So senior engineer, and we are going to name this object as senior. Just like that. Okay, so the senior engineer has, if we go back to header, so it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values. So let's start that off. So it starts off with the first name. So let's name the senior engineer as Anne. Last name Smith. ID, so let's name the ID as 6. Her salary, so shall we have it per year, per month? I mean, let's just do, how about we just do any number? I mean, okay, let's just do per month. So we can just say that maybe she gets £2,000 a month for now. So again, this is a double, so it's not a string. Okay, her bonus, so we can have her bonus as, let's have it as 300. And her extended salary, because she is a senior engineer, let's give her an extended of also 1,000. Just like that. So now we have senior engineer. Now let's make our normal engineer. So engineer, we're going to have it as engineer. Let's have our engineer named as Thomas Walkers. So his ID is, let's say 4. Whoops, it's a string. So his ID is 4. Okay. Obviously his salary is going to be much more lower than £2,000. So let's say the salary is, let's give it 700 for now. Okay. The bonus, let's give him a bonus of 200. And of course it has no extended salary. So you're just going to end that right there. So before I carry on, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back inside my senior engineer header file, because I'm not really liking the fact that I've named both the private members over here salary, and also over here I've also named them salary, because you can't tell which one's actually the private member. So I'm just going to make some changes, because over here you can tell first name is the actual private member, and then we're assigning here F name, which holds the first name, and we're putting it inside the private variable. So I'm just going to make quick changes. So over here I'm just going to name this one base salary, and I'm going to name this one, let's do awarded bonus. So they're just very quick changes I'm going to do. So I'm going to do set base salary, because I didn't want, when you look at the code you might get confused, so I thought this would be a much better way if I just made those changes quickly. Okay, so now I can go back to my CPP file. Again, this also shows how easy it is when it comes to using header file CPP files. So I mean, if it was all in one file, I mean, I'll be scrolling up and down trying to find them, but because it's split up, it's much more easier. Okay, so I can do set base salary, and I'm just also going to do set awarded bonus. So again, these are fine, so these holds these. Set base salary as well over here. So here you have it so confusing, so salary equals salary. Instead I can just change this to base salary, so now we know that's the private member. And same thing with here, so I'm going to do get base salary. So I apologize for not doing this earlier. I mean, it was in the back of my head. I mean, I thought to myself, shall I go back and change it? It'll be much more easier. And I thought, you know what, I actually should, because this again, I always put all my source code inside my GitHub, which will be inside the description box below. So if people want to go out to go onto my GitHub and look at the code, it'll be much more easier for them to understand. And again, when it comes to program, it's all about presenting really nice code and really understandable code. Okay, and lastly, get base salary, and plus that with the get awarded bonus. Okay, I'm just gonna copy these over here. Okay, so I just wanted to produce some, something really nice, something that you'll be able to understand as well. Okay, so now if I go back to the main, we can continue. Okay, so as I said, we have our engineer now object, and we have our senior object. So now if I do, let's do count. If I do engineer dot, let's do get the salary of the engineer. So now if I run this, we should get 700, which is correct. We got 700. Now what I can also do is, let's get the salary of the senior. So that should be 2,000. So now if I do get base salary, okay, so we got 700 and we got 2,000, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so now let's just play about even more. So how about we could print out also their first names. I mean, we can do, let me just leave this over here. Let's do engineer, let's get the first name, and with the senior engineer, let's get the last name. So we should now get Thomas Smith. And is that what we're going to get? Yep, that's correct. So now we've got Thomas and Smith. So now we know that that is working. So how about we get each of their bonuses? So if I just go ahead and copy this. I mean, I could do, you know, the whole print out everything, but I just wanted to really show you how it works. So if I do get bonus, and let's see the bonuses, so we should get 200 and 300, which is correct. We got 200 and we got 300. Okay, now let's do, for senior engineer, let's get the extended salary. So that should be 1,000. So if I just run this, okay, look, so it is 1,000. Actually, let me remove this. So actually, we'll leave that here. But if I was now to copy, I mean, if I was to change this to engineer, we will not get nothing. As you can see, we get an error, and it says there's no member named extended salary in engineer, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so now let's just leave this here. I'll leave this here so you guys can play about with it and, you know, print out different statements. So what we also do is we can set. So not only can we get, we can also set. So if I can do, let's do another print. So I can do engineer dot, let's set the engineer salary. So I also 700 is a bit too low for an engineer, so let's give it 900. Okay, just like that. And now, whoops, shouldn't have printed that out. Okay, so now if I just print this now, so as you can see, we had 700, but now we set it to 900, and now we have 900. So again, let me just remove, actually okay, let's comment this selection. Okay, so let's see that again. So the salary was 700. We've set now the base salary to 900, and now when we print out the base salary, it is 900 in fact, which is good. So now, lastly, let's just do one more thing. Let's do a print statement before that actually. So if I do now engineer dot print, what will print out, and if I just comment this and this, okay, so if I do engineer dot print, it prints out Thomas, salary, and the bonus. So if I just go to engineer print, so it prints out the salary, the name, the salary, and the bonus. And if we go to senior engineer, it will print out it will also print out the extended salary as well as whatever prints out in the engineer. So we're invoking that. So if I just go back to my main class and I do senior.print, it should print out everything the same. So we should have now Anne, her salary, bonus, and also the extended salary. So if we just do that, yep, there you go. The extended salary, we have it as 1,000, and here is 1,000. Okay, and now lastly, again, let's do that. Okay, let's get the overall total salary. So if we go to engineer, let's do that first. So engineer's total salary is the base salary plus by the bonus. So if I just go to the main, the engineer salary is basically 700 plus 200, which is 900. So if I now do engineer, actually let's do print. So we do engineer dot total salary. You should now get 900, which is correct. And now with the senior engineer total salary, it will be 2,000 plus 1,000, which is 3,000, plus 300, which is 3,300, which is what we should get. Okay, and then I'm just going to run that, And yep, there we have it, 3,300. So now we know that we successfully worked on inheritance. Okay, so before I go ahead and comment, I this in my free time, but just to recap, so what we did is we created a engineer base class. We then extended this base class and created a senior engineer. This is a derived class, so we're basically using everything from the engineer base class, but we're extending it. So this is all about software reuse. Rather than writing another senior engineer class being exactly the same as engineer, we're using the engineer class and we're just extending it. So we have that, we did that, which is great. We separated the header file with the CPP file. We used constructors. So let me just go back and show you something. So with the engineer, so here we have Thomas Walker's. So what this does is when we create the object, it basically calls the engineer constructor, and it basically takes the values from wherever the user enters, and then it puts them inside the private member variables. Same thing with the senior engineer. Okay, and then so over here we created two objects now, engineer and senior engineer, and now we can call the methods and print out and play around with it and work with it. So that is inheritance. Again, there will be a further video on polymorphism, so we're still going to use this, but we're going to extend on it and use abstract classes and using the virtual and pure virtual functions. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video and you've learnt from it. I will be putting this video inside my GitHub again, so you can access the source code, play around with it, and just experiment. So the whole purpose is for you just to get an idea on how to work with inheritance. You can use this, change it up. So instead of senior engineer and engineer, you can have current account and savings account. You can have undergraduate and postgraduate, senior officer and officer. So just play around with it and just see, change the values, change the variables, change the definitions, and just see what you can do. So again, I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you really liked the video, please give this video a thumbs up. Wait for my other video, which will be about polymorphism, which will be much more complex than this, but hopefully it will still be beneficial. So thank you for watching this video. Comment if you have any questions.